All right, time to unset. How you doing today? How you feeling? That's enough small talk. Let's get after it. Hello. Welcome. I hope everybody's hanging in there. Can you believe it? Here we are at episode 6, and they said it would never last. It's a good one. My guest today has multiple Emmys, and if you've ever watched the Academy Awards or the Super Bowl, you've seen his work. He's responsible for some of the most iconic episodes on VH1's legendary Behind the Music, and he's here on The Mind Unset. I'm thrilled to have him. Please enjoy my conversation with director, producer, editor, and good friend, Mark Stepp. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining me, man. Where are you today?
Hey, good to see you, Chris. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, of all places.
Right on, where it all started.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on there? Are you working on a project?
Yeah, we this time of year we do the CMA Fest for ABC television, and we shot it the week of June 9th, and we're heavily into the edit right now and starting to finish up. We got 2 more weeks, and then we'll deliver the show.
For anyone that doesn't know who you are, can you just give a brief breakdown of what you actually do? What's your gig, in addition to the president of Uppercut Media?
Well, I'm mainly a editor, specializing in multi-camera editing, concerts and shows that require that kind of work, Oscars, Emmys, some entertainment around sports. I direct a little bit, and I also produce a little bit of projects along the way, mostly television-based, occasional film here and there.
When you say that, it's almost like you're downplaying it. It's funny because you do the Academy Awards. You're an Emmy Award winner, multiple Emmy Awards. You did the Super Bowl halftime show. You're not like Joe's Exterminating Services.
Well, I've been at it a long time, going on over 20 years. I'm very fortunate to work with the people that I do. I'm always a team member of a lot of people to get these shows done, and it humbles me as much as it is great work, and I've always just tried to do the best job that I can, deliver the product that I'm asked to deliver, and at the end of the day, it's a job that I have a privilege of doing, but it's also work, and everybody involved has equal work ethic. So I think for me, at the end of the day, if everybody went home like we did something good, then that's what makes me the most happiest. And it doesn't have anything to do with rubbing against a celebrity or, I got to do this game or that show. It's just it's all great. I mean, next month I'm involved in South Park is doing a 25th anniversary concert at Red Rocks. And Stuart Copeland, who's a fantastic drummer and actually an idol of mine because I was a drummer in a past life, I'll get to work with him on that. And that one I'm a little stargazed about. I can't wait to be involved in that.
Well, Stuart Copeland is one of my top 3 of all times. The Police were... they're my go-to default band. Like, how do you not rock out to Zenyatta Mandata and Regatta de Blanc and all those things before Synchronicity? Yeah,
and he was such a unique drummer when they hit. And I mean, he wasn't about playing 2 and 4. He was about everything in between it, and just made that 3-piece band a whole different thing than it could have been. And now he does some really unique things, orchestrations for scores and all this. So my understanding is he's kind of the host of this thing, and he is going to drum, and I'll know more once I get on site. But and Red Rocks is such a magical place anyway. It'll be a unique event.
So, when did it all start for you? When did you know that you wanted to be in the entertainment business? Did you, when you were a kid, did you make movies and stuff? It was all different back then. They didn't have iPhones and stuff, right?
I got started really late on the visual arts side of things. I was raised in a musical family, and like I said, was a drummer. I studied classical percussion, and that's basically what my degree was in, and I always just wanted to be a drummer. Ended up in Athens, Georgia, kind of in the alt scene, and it was great. But in that process, I learned to mix front of house audio, started mixing audio live shows at the famous 40 Watt Club of Athens, Georgia, and it was a great training ground for me. Started mixing some audio for records, and at that time, from Athens, you could come up to Nashville on the weekends and rent decent studios for not much rate, and because nobody worked on the weekends here then, and just marathon, record a record, take it back to Athens and see what you could do with it. So that kind of got me into being aware of what was happening in Nashville. Through a friend of a friend, I started getting hired to engineer on some big string dates at a studio here in town, and they were also involved in some television shows. And I was got to a point in Athens where I was starving, living in a van, and it was getting old for a young man's game. So I decided to migrate to Nashville because I was going to get a job with a company. It was kind of like SRI, a studio instrument rental company that would, pay the bills, but I would still mix a lot more. And 2 days after I got here, that job rescinded. So I was kind of here with nothing to do other than mixing, which freelancer world, it was a bit scary. Through that studio I was working in, they were doing some television show, and I got hired to do some audio for a television show. Had no idea what any of that was, how to do audio for television, but I learned quickly and had good people around me. So we would mix that show pretty quickly, but the video would take a long time. So I just started hanging out in the edit bay, and to make extra money, I would clean up, do whatever I could. And then they got a huge order for a bunch of shows. They went from 10 shows to 26, and the producer and the supervising editors decided to give me a shot at editing and thought I could do it. And literally, once I sat down and did it, I was done. I switched. I wasn't cold turkey on music at the time, but it was music related because it was a music show. But I just felt that from being a drummer, the rhythm and pace of picture editing aligned with me. Plus, I was kind of going at the picture edit from an audio side of points. If I heard a banjo, I was going to try to see it. And it just stuck to me. And at that point, I just went on and on and on and became an editor here in Nashville. Worked here for several years, and then some of my directors and clients started taking me to L.A., and then Napster hit.
Yeah, no, Napster put me out of business.
Yeah, it stuck it to the music video business, which was a lot of my bread and butter at the time. And luckily I had some friends that were already in LA or working in LA, and found out that VH1's Behind the Music needed some editors, and that was a really heavily edited show and kind of an editor's type show, and lucked into getting on that staff. Other clients out there, multi-camera editing since. I started getting a niche to work in live production as well. So now it's kind of vice versa. I have a place in LA and I have a place in Nashville, and then I'm on the road several days of the year, especially now that the pandemic's cranking down. We can get out there and do what we used to do.
I didn't know. I knew you were a drummer, but I didn't know you were a classically trained drummer. I didn't know that because I went to school for jazz.
Percussion,
okay. And
yeah.
That's how I started, and then
I didn't know that about you either.
The famous joke.
Well, what was the one I heard early too? Is what do you call a drummer without a girlfriend? Homeless. Yeah, exactly. You know that.
So I met you right around when you were doing the VH1 gig.
Yeah, I think so. Right.
Yeah. So when you hit the VH1 stride, right? Because that was a big show. That kind of changed a lot of things that was like on the forefront of the music documentary stuff, like long form music. Nobody was doing that.
Right.
So when you landed that gig, did you actually like take a breath and think that you finally made it? Or was it just like feast or famine? I got to keep digging because this could go away, like every freelancer feels.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think that at first, it was like, okay, this is great. This is something different to do. And I think the biggest thing, I was in a different environment. And I was getting my feet wet in LA, which for me at the time was kind of daunting because it was, Hollywood.
Scary.
It was Hollywood, scary and all that. But I quickly found out that honestly it was a small community. It's a lot of circles and niches of different communities, but for multi-camera television editing, it was a small community. So it took a while for it to land, but honestly, for me, when I was doing two of the episodes I did, one was Motley Crue, and the other one was the Black Crowes. I felt really, really great about those shows when they were done, and I felt like, wow, this is a big stepping stone. That this I'll get some mileage out of this, and and at that point, around that time is when I moved permanently to LA, or really kind of made LA my primary residence, and then just rolled from there. And when I was doing behind the music for Tiffany, I knew we were done. So we were out of stories at that point.
Oh, that's really interesting. Two things I really think are interesting in that is A, you had the wherewithal to realize that your work had stepped up, and you were like, wow, okay, that's really good. Yeah. Because most creative people just are full of self-doubt and they just go, oh, I don't know if it's good. I don't know if what I'm doing is good, but I think that's really interesting. And then two, when you were working on Tiffany, it's kind of funny because I heard Janie Lane talking about from Warrant, the singer from Warrant. It might have been on VH1 Behind the Music. He was talking about how he used to walk into the label and they had a big picture of Warrant behind the front desk. The Cherry Pie album cover.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Yeah. And then one day he walked in and it was gone and Metallica was there. And he goes, I knew my record deal was over.
Before I ever even got into the office, they were kicking me out.
Before he ever walked in to get the meeting.
Yeah, well, you and I both know there's no loyalty in this industry. So
no, sir.
You just wake up every day and know that's going to happen. You can get a lot done.
Can you watch movies or shows for fun anymore? Or do you just sit there and see all the edits and that you're critiquing the lighting? Because my wife hates watching movies with me because I'll be like, wow, look at that lighting. That's beautiful. Oh, man, that camera. She's like, shut up. Will you just shut up?
Well, that's actually a really good question and very relative. I have an intern working with us right now on the show, and so she sat and watched us work for a week, and then she went and watched a movie and said things were different now. and definitely after I first started learning, I'm trying to remember the first movie I saw. It was Clerks at the famous Belcourt here in Nashville, wow. Tennessee. And I went and saw that movie, and it was such a different experience. I didn't really get the movie. I was just watching the technique and watching the edit and finding the great things. And hey, every one of them has a mistake in it, and because you just run out of time or money, whichever's first. And I had to go back and watch it again the next day to kind of be a real viewer instead of an editor watching it. And I've learned to separate myself a lot from it all, but live events are tough to watch because I'm watching those mistakes happen in real time and understand what everybody involved what happened to that mistake and why it happened and all that, especially sports. Sports is a tricky one. So
right, and I want to unpack because I listened to the podcast you did with Scott Simmons on the Art of the Frame.
Yep.
And I really loved it because you guys both found a way, even though it was a really industry-specific piece on editors and softwares and stuff, there were so many things in there that I found as a layman. I spent 10 years in the producing side of the film industry too, but maybe that's what was interesting to me. But you talked about your job being both left brain and right brain because you have the technical side and you have the creative side. And as an artist, I think as a drummer, you said earlier, you unpack it from a musical position. So can you talk a little bit about how, that sets you apart? I think when I read all this stuff, there isn't much to find on you online because I was trying to find some really incredibly weird high school statistic that I could pull out and have you say, holy shit, how did you find that? But I didn't. So yeah, I think it's really interesting that you said that. Can you unpack that?
Yeah,
well, as an artist working in a technical field?
I run away from the social media.
Oh, me too. God, I hate it.
And I don't actively try to take stuff down like our buddy Prince did, but I definitely I don't participate in it, so it's hard to find stuff. It's interesting. I know plenty of people that do similar things to me, but they, through no fault of their own, but just through how they work, they may be singularly left brain, or they may be singularly right brain. I know very creative editors that wouldn't know how to turn on a computer. And on the other end, I know some guys who are incredible editors, but they choose to do nuts and bolts. Everything's, online. It's more technical than not, but they're definitely, it's an art in its own, and it's also highly skilled and very much needed. I think for me, because I was a musician first, and I know you can relate to this as a drummer, you're using your four appendages, your arms and your legs independently of each other as much as you can. So I think that automatically causes you to be a little left brain, right brain, because there's the mechanics of it, but then at the same time you're trying to be musical. That's why every drummer sounds different, because they've got a creative edge working on their way. So I think some of that may have naturally already been starting in my youth, and I started banging on drums in junior high school and pretty much never stopped. And a lot of different aspects of it. I was involved in marching band and drum corps. I was involved in jazz bands like you, and then the classical thing as well. So I was seeing a lot of different aspects of it, which I think was already embedding in my brain what the left side can be doing at the same time as the right side. When I got to picture, the two things that I noticed was I was hearing the audio more than I was seeing the picture at first, because that's what I was used to. Here we are in headphones, and we're really audio based, and so the audio was driving me to what would be edited, even in dialogue. I mean, not just music, but also in dialogue. And then I think there's a rhythm to life. Everything in life
Absolutely.
has a rhythm. You get in a car, it's got a rhythm. A train's got a rhythm. People talking, we have a pace going right now that might be slow for a bit, might be fast for a bit. And I was kind of paying attention to that rhythm. And say it's an interview with two people, there's a rhythm there. And then as far as picture went, I started watching a lot of movies from a picture standpoint, and why I like the edit, and versus why a movie may not work editorially. And I slowly learned that, they're leading this video edit with an audio sound. Like the next scene had a train, so you hear the train coming in. And I just started learning techniques that fool your eyes. Basically, your ears are going to lead your eyes to where exactly when you want to go. And that's a big deal now with VR. The audio is so important in VR. So I think...
What is VR for the layman's?
Virtual reality, where you're
cool.
wearing the headset and you're
Yeah.
inside. And just simply, we want you to look left, but the audio is going to make you look that way, not your eyes, because your eyes are kind of trying to take everything in. So I think... At the end of the day, my creative side was initially based on the technical side, and then released the creative part in me. And I didn't go to film school. My education wasn't based on film, so I think early on I was breaking a lot of unsaid rules. And that's the great thing about doing multi-camera music is, hey, it's anything goes. And when I edit a song, I try to edit it fast and spontaneous like the song was made. So therefore, I'm trying to reflect what the live experience was like for a viewer who's sitting at home watching that. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm not sure if I really was on the right path.
No, it was so fascinating. Like the other thing I found fascinating in that Scott Simmons podcast piece was you talked about shooting live events, and then they shoot all of the dress rehearsals in case there's an accident or a malfunction on the day of. You can slip in a piece from the rehearsals.
Correct.
And then I don't want to talk over your story, but you talked about what happened in Rent when you were filming Rent for a really big piece that was coming out. I forget where it was, but can you talk about what happened and how you guys remedied that?
Yeah, basically, there was a trend about 4 years ago where they started doing live musicals. Sound of Music was first, and then I did Grease live, and then you're speaking about Rent live. And basically, it's taking a musical and doing it live on television as much as possible. we always, as a requirement, the last dress rehearsal we tape, and then we edit it just to clean it up a little bit, and it becomes what we call the safety show. That way, if there's a disaster of any kind, lights go down, there's an issue, weather, whatever the case may be, because a lot of these shows are outdoor, the network has a backup show that they can play. The lead, the male lead, after the dress rehearsal, the night before the show, fell and broke his calf. Pretty good, enough to wheelchair him. And unfortunately, unlike a Broadway musical, there is not understudies on these shows. So a Broadway musical say, okay, you're in, put the next guy in who's,
Right.
or girl, and they go at it. We did not have that. So a decision was made that we were going to play on broadcast. We would play the tape, and for the live audience that was actually there on site in the room, they would perform what we would call a stand-up. They're not going through the motions of the musical. They're just in an arc, and whatever actors needed to be involved in that scene would go. The last act, they were just going to run that live on the broadcast too to show it. So that decision was made at like 4 a.m. the day of, and then I got the call. So I went in because they wanted to piece together scenes from 3 dress rehearsals, because we had varying levels of performance, and you always want to put out the best thing you can. So I spent that day re-editing and making sure everything was good. The audio mixers were mixing a little bit. We cleaned up as much as we could, and that's what went on air that night. There was a slate at the top that was a disclaimer so that, we didn't want to fool people that it was live, and it was pre-recorded at that point. But I thought it was a great gesture that they did the last scene, the last act, live, so that the actors did get on television, and it was kind of a nice homage to the lead, because everybody felt bad that he felt worse than anyone. So.
And that's what I found super interesting. That's the point I wanted to get to, is that they all came out at the end, because you said he came out in a wheelchair for that.
Yeah, he had
scene.
full boot, wheelchair, just sitting in the middle of the stage.
So in a way, like what I'm getting at is that in a way, didn't that make it a really cool, authentic experience, that you took something really that could have been negative, and yes, I'm sure as investors and people that are working so hard to put that show on, they don't want to have to shoot and edit together 3 dress rehearsals. But in the end, it kind of seemed like it was a really poignant moment for those people that were there and had that experience.
I think, it actually, again, I was one of many people involved in getting that to happen. And you just touched on everything involved. There were agents involved. There were networks involved. There were 4 different networks that were involved in this broadcast.
Sure, all freaking out.
But everybody was very calm. Said their piece, and we decided the best path to go. For the ultimate result, and we went that way, and everybody rallied, and we got it done. And I think that it was another one of those nights when we finished, it was wow, that worked, and it worked well, considering it could have been canceled. They could have just said screw it and not even air it. It made for actually a very unique, uplifting sigh of relief rap party.
I bet.
Yeah, and everybody was talking a lot more than just toasting. So
yeah, that's awesome. I really love that story, because most people never get the behind the scenes, right? We all everyone on the front end just sees the whatever happens, no matter how many mistakes are in there. You're seeing the facade of the whole hundreds of production crews efforts. Yeah. So like, what happens in a show so big as the Super Bowl halftime show that you've worked on? Like, what is the stress involved on that level? Is everybody calm, or is everybody kind of? I'm sure they are. I mean, I think in those atmospheres, but
luckily I think I'm on my 13th or 14th Super Bowl, and It's been a lot of the same people every year, which there's value in a team that is one used to doing something, and also the loyalty factor. If it's there, it's something to cherish in our industry. So the stress comes from every year is a different stadium.
And yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and what if you want to talk behind the scenes, when you do the Super Bowl, the stage has to be built in under 7 minutes on the field. So it involves usually somewhere between 20 and 50 carts that are carrying all of the staging equipment, which includes props, lights, instruments, anything they need, PA.
Pyrotechnics now?
What's that?
Pyrotechnics now?
Yeah, pyrotechnics. Everything has to be portable because it's on in 7 minutes, the show is done, and then it's off in 5 minutes because that's the length of the halftime. And each of those carts are manned by, depending on how heavy they are, up to 15 people, and those are volunteers. So a lot of the rehearsal is that. We don't just say, okay, here's the downbeat, play for 13 minutes. There's a rehearsal of, okay, set the stopwatch, and people are discovering traffic problems, and wait, I can't make it that far down the field in that time. I need more people, or things like that. That's one of the fascinating things to me, because I'm waiting for the rehearsal to start, so I get to watch that unfold. And I
would love to see that. I would love to see that choreography.
It's actually, the fans, if you go to a game, you see it because it's happening.
Okay.
And I think certain people who haven't gone to the concession stand to grab a beer and a pizza are watching you going, oh, I never knew this happened. So there's a stress level involved in that. And then it's a lot of cameras, and it's a lot of graphics. And then the other stressful thing is we rehearse for the last thing Friday evening we're done at 7, and we don't do it again until it's the show. So Friday night, Saturday, and half of Sunday, you're just hanging out. But we are working. Everybody's double, triple checking everything, and sometimes some changes.
Visualizing all the moves.
Visualizing, talking through things.
Choreography.
Yeah, a lot of times they have a tape of the rehearsal, of the last rehearsal, which again, there's a disaster rehearsal for that show too. So they'll run it and talk to the cameras. And so when it is halftime and the show comes up, it's usually really, really locked in. And it's a great group of people that do it, that are currently doing it, and it's a fun one to do. It's one I look forward to every year. And I'm not even a huge football fan. I grew up in basketball country, so.
Yeah, you grew up in Kentucky, right?
Yes, I did.
Oh man, they're all about their basketball.
Oh yeah, we blew it last year. So.
Were you there for any of the dramatic Super Bowl halftime? You weren't there for the Janet Jackson drama or anything like that,
No. I'm trying to think of my first one. Gosh.
How about the Prince one in the rain, Purple Rain?
Yes.
Oh shit! What was that like?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful, and he drove that. You know, he wasn't gonna not play. The guy was a professional, and he understood that people paid a lot of money to be that, and that people, there was a lot at stake at that, and it actually worked out perfectly. I mean, it was fascinating. It's still, to me, the quintessential halftime show that has ever been. I mean, there's a few. I enjoyed Bruce. I enjoyed The Who. I thought that Lady Gaga, what an incredible work ethic. I mean, that she's an impressive woman. That. Yeah, impressive. Yeah.
So, are there any times like this Mind Unset podcast that I'm doing here? I'm kind of trying to talk to these really at the top of their game creatives.
Oh, I'll see if I can find you one.
Yeah. Are there any times where you feel like you're just not on your A game, but you have a high pressure situation that you just got to fight through? How do you work through those days?
Well, yeah, there's plenty of those days because most everything I work on has a hard deadline. I'm kind of the last stop, so we're usually already starting a little behind the 8 ball, and then and it's a zero tolerance. I cannot miss a delivery date, even if it's a tape thing. there's requirements and you get fined if you don't. The days that is really rough, and I had one yesterday, I kind of, for lack of a better term, I zen myself out of it a little bit and try to separate myself from it. And I think what I'm doing there is really checking my ego, because that part of it doesn't really have anything to do with me. I've been hired to deliver, and I'll put on the hats and eyes of the people above me and say, okay, they're asking me to do this. Whether I disagree with it or not, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in a timely manner. Sometimes that requires me to stay late. Sometimes that requires me to stay all night, but it is part of the job, and I look at those days as it's still a privilege to do it. I could be doing something a lot less satisfying. So at that point, the creative side of it is technically executing what they want in a timely manner. And if I deliver, I know there's client loyalty involved. Plus, I got a note for the next time it happens.
Yeah, because you can't, like, the one thing I also found really interesting in that Scott Simmons interview was you said editors will inherit everyone else's problems. The entire picture that was shot, if it was a footage problem or if it was a weather problem or a transportation or communication problem, it all ends up in your lap and you got to fix it.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's like I said, it's the last stop. So anything left over from the production side of it that might have been problematic, part of my job is offering solutions if there's multiple options, or be the bad cop and say, we can't do anything about it. And
right.
Seasoned producers that I work with, one of them, classic gentleman, his whole thing is no solution, no problem, moving on. So and then it's done, because you're fighting time at that point. I mean, I can fix most anything, but money and time is always the enabler or stopper of those situations. And at that point, I understand that I'm in the service of others, that they got more pressure on them than I do at that point in the game. So the best thing I can do is support them in some ways, be a therapist, and get us all through the problem, so that hopefully that show comes back to us next year and doesn't go away.
Interesting. And so now that, I mean, you've reached the level, you're flying back and forth, LA to Nashville, you're working on the Academy Awards, you're working on CMAs, you're working on the Super Bowl, you did SpaceX, Elon Musk, SpaceX. Like, how do you balance the work life? Is there a work life balance now, or is it just I'm going to make hay while I can and I'll worry about my life when
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess truth be told, I've probably always been a touch of a workaholic. I hate that word, and personally I don't think I am, but other people have made the comment. I think for me, years ago, I watched an interview with Nile Rodgers, and he said what drove him was an extreme fear of failure. And I think that resonated with me in my world. And, I grew up way removed from any of this. I mean, I grew up as a kid in Kentucky playing basketball, and that was it. And I never thought in 100 years I would end up where I am. I'm very fortunate, mostly due to good people around me that took care of me. But I think that thing, his statement really stuck with me through my career, especially in the hard days. Like, I'm not going to fail at this. Parents, good parenting, pushed me to do a good job always. And I think that stuck with me too. Right before pandemic, I was starting to kind of feel like I need to slow down. I'm getting older. Starting to see like, hey, I might need to retire. I'm getting of that age. But then pandemic hit, and myself included, everybody's freaked out. And I started saying, shoot, it could all shut down tomorrow. I got to take as much work as I can. I started working remotely as everybody else did and had a decent setup, but it was a grind. And then it started picking back up, and now you've keyed on some of the unique projects that I've been privileged to do, and I'm getting some of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. And that kind of tends me to say, why should I stop? But at the same time, the work-life balance isn't good in my world, and I think it needs to be. So interpersonally, I'm taking a look at that and trying to start making some changes to head that way. And if any of it, it might be for stress relief and mental health gains and all that. And I think for me too, also, as I think of that, I'm going to start really helping people that, you know, are training to be editors or in the world. You know, I'm totally happy to pass the torch, and passing the torch may keep me still involved a little bit.
If a kid comes to you today and says he wants to become an editor with everything streaming and how it's all changing, what do you tell them?
Well, I'll tell you, the first joke I say is I go introduce them to the makeup artist and the still production photographer because those guys have great jobs, and they're first in and first out, and they carry very little gear, and they make really good money.
And makeup artists never wear the right friggin' shoes ever.
I hadn't noticed that, but I'll start looking. If they want to edit, I'm happy to teach them. I have, you know, like I said, 2 interns here. One of them really wants to edit, but I also, in today's world, try to make sure they're going to learn other things as well. I couldn't have a career right now as just an editor. My producing and directing, one, gets me some other work, but it also helps me edit more efficiently. And everything's budget concerning. And editors can be really downplayed or part of lower budgets now because broadcast television is getting more and more to be a thing of the past. Streamers are in, and they're trying to keep the quality, but most everybody's watching stuff on the phone. And producers are aware of this, so they're thinking that editorially things aren't as important as they used to be. Little speakers, little picture.
Yeah. Do you find it ironic that they're spending $100 million on a motion picture to watch on a cell phone?
I do. And
I do too. It blows my mind.
Yeah, and still things that are latched onto that drive budgets are really amazing to me. But, you know, so anybody that's up and coming and doing it, I try to tell them, hey, editing's still going to be needed. They're just not going to spend as much time in an edit bay in the world I'm in. Movies might, but television definitely doesn't. Most shows I'm working on right now, coming out of pandemic, they're reducing days. You know, it's part of making money, and I understand it, so I have to adapt or die. And so I just say, you know, learn editing, but also go hang out in the camera department. You know, go hang out on production. I got into live production because somebody said, we don't like our live bumpers. What can you do for us? And I just took an editorial approach and said, what if we do this? And carved a niche. So there was another job that I could do that I enjoyed, and it was a unique skill. So that guaranteed me some work. And still does to this day. So, or, you know, the classic, be your own filmmaker. Learn to do it all, and make your movie on your phone, and then you're, you know, you're the next influencer, as they say.
There you go. Oh, so if 20-year-old Stepp comes to you for current Stepp advice, what do you tell him?
Keep drumming.
That's the first time anyone has ever said stay in the music business.
I honestly, I really miss it.
Do you still play at all? Do you have a kit?
I don't. I
need to remedy that.
It's a regret. And I didn't think about it till 10 years later. When I left Nashville for LA, I knew I wouldn't live in a place where I could make that kind of noise, and electronic drum kits really weren't functioning well yet. So I left my kit to a studio here in town. I just said, hey, you guys can inherit this. They had always liked the sound of it, and they had actually rented it from me some. So I just said, here, you guys take this. And I regret at some point not picking up the kit. I played a couple of bands I've been in. in Athens. We'd play a couple of reunion shows, and that was always fun. But to really sit down and get the chops back and grind it out, and I miss it, and I miss it more and more. And I'm wondering if when I retire or slow down in this world, I might start picking it back up again just for fun. I would have years of rust to dispel from my hands and my feet to be able to drum again. But that's what I would tell my 20-year-old. So I've had a great career and I love it. I couldn't imagine anything else. But looking back, you know, as an artist, I would have loved to have made it.
Are you still involved in racing cars? When we met, you were heavily into the Acura NSX.
I still have my NSX.
The same one?
Same one, my only car.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I don't drive a lot. Surprisingly enough, in LA, I actually don't drive a whole lot.
I get that. I hate driving.
I'm on a plane more than I'm in a car. It's just one of those things. It's superficial and a boy toy or whatever. But every time I'm in it, I just love it. And I still take it to the track every once in a while, let it open up, do what it's made for, and all that. And in pandemic, it's become incredibly valuable. I still don't see myself getting rid of it.
Is there anything that you carry into racing when you from your editing world?
Yeah.
When you're driving?
Yeah. Well, as an editor, that's a great question, and I've never thought about it. But two things come to mind. One, as an editor, you kind of are a singular island. You're the one doing the work, and more you're left alone. So you're kind of a journeyman. Here, somebody's giving me this pile of rocks, and I got to make them shine, and they kind of let you go for a while. So if you're in a race car, you're kind of there by yourself. The other thing, it kind of related, but when I'm editing, I really have to be singularly focused. I can't do anything else. I can't even stand getting a phone call or anything like that. And if you're in a race car, you're singularly focused, or you're going to run off the track and hit a wall or hit somebody else. So I think that's the two main things, and I think that's why I still like racing, because it is a focused thing that I can't think about anything else. Can't think about bad edits or budgets or clients or whatever. I just gotta get through that. I'm still involved a little bit, not as much as I was, but I still enjoy it. Good question.
Thanks, man. So before I let you go, give me 3 movies that Stepp considers a must watch. Can't go through life without seeing 3 pictures.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. From an editorial standpoint, or just me?
No, I just mean like no business bullshit. Like these 3 movies blew you away. They made an impact on your life, and you consider them a must. Like everyone must see them.
Okay. I'll say one would be Clerks, because that was a movie that I saw when I was first editing. So I started viewing that first as an editor and then as a fan. And then also I was being immersed in the business. So when I found out that it was made for $37,000 or something, and it was put on credit cards, and it was shot over 5 to 7 days, and it worked, it's highly quotable. I'm going to give you 4. Because along the same lines,
like typical Stepp over delivery.
Yeah, I'm overkill. Along the same lines would be Big Lebowski for much of the same reasons. I can watch that movie anytime, start to finish, and love it and find new things. Then from an editorial standpoint, and also I think a very early changing of the guard and changing of the motif is Memento. Which was an early Chris Nolan film, and strictly from an editor standpoint, that movie is half told forward, half told backwards. So to craft that as an editor and make it work, kudos to the good people that did that. Also, it changed the way storytelling was done at the time. That's 3 so far, right?
Yeah,
oh,
3 good ones.
Now it might have to be 5. Then I would go with Tropic Thunder, because that movie.
You worked on that.
I worked on a promotional video for that with Ben Stiller and a couple other people in it. Nick Nolte. We had to cut. Yeah, Robert Downey Jr. and Jack Black, and that was just a fun experience. But just to watch the movie in general, that was completely respectfully bashing my industry, was incredible. And I still think for a comedy film it holds up, which a lot of comedy films struggle with. And then Talladega Nights.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, but
I haven't seen it.
Oh,
I can't stand Will Ferrell as a comedy actor.
Oh, you can't.
I love him as a serious actor. He
Really?
did that one movie with the one where he was like an OCD guy.
Oh yeah. Did
you see that one?
Yeah, I did see that one. Yeah, he's
awesome in that.
Yeah, he's just a great actor. But that's interesting. Do me a favor.
Yeah.
And you're bored off your ass. Watch Talladega Nights.
I'll do it.
It's really, to me, two things there. One, I think it's a great ensemble cast. It's not just him. He's the main guy up front, but John C. Reilly holds up with him as well. And then there's a lovely woman that plays his wife. Well, she ends up being both of their wives. Not giving anything away, but it's quotable. There's family stuff, there's kids stuff, there's racing stuff, which probably appealed to me, and there's just dumb movie stuff, which works.
Right.
The other thing is I had the pleasure of working with Michael Mann several years ago on a short film he did for the Oscars, which was kind of a what is America through films? How is the story of America told through films? And
interesting.
Yeah,
awesome.
And he had a great writer on it with him, but it was a lot of Blade Runner in there and Once Upon a Time in America. There was just a lot of serious historical films that were in there, and all of a sudden we were working. I was actually isolated working on my own, and I took the quote from Talladega Nights. There's a famous quote that says, "Thank you, sweet baby Jesus, for the $20 million." It's just Will Ferrell and a bunch of crap, and he's thinking Jesus, but he's thanking him for the money. And I just kind of juxtaposed that in the middle of it, and Michael Mann just kind of said, "That's it. It's America's hodgepodge. It's just a bunch of different people with different views on the same thing," and that became the runner. And the kind of the arc of the whole thing. So that movie probably sticks with me because that was a pretty cool job in my past that I was lucky to deal with. So and at that time the director of the Oscars, a very, very good director, done it for years. When they played that thing in rehearsal, he went out of his way to find out who did it and came up and thanked me and said that was unique. So there's one of those good things I went home with that I felt like.
So can we watch that?
Oh, it's probably online somewhere. What's
it called?
I think if you searched Michael Mann Story of America through film,
okay,
it might pop up if somebody posted it or the Academy put it up at some time. If I can find it, I'll look for it. I'll send you a link to it as well. It's a unique little, no VO, no go from here to here to here, just kind of randomly.
I love it.
Stuff happening, and that's funny. It makes me want to see it again. I'll look for it too because I haven't seen it in, gosh, that was probably 10 or 15 years ago. So
interesting. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Jeff Bridges. He's one of my favorite.
Yeah, what's the new one that came out that he's in?
I don't know, but what's coming to mind is, did you see Come Hell or High Water? Where he was the Texas sheriff.
Yep, great movie.
Oh, just
great movie.
Blows my mind. The whole opening shot, I won't even go into that opening shot because it's just tech geek stuff. But
he's so versatile.
He just, come on, like Big Lebowski to Texas Sheriff, and then go back to the Fabulous Baker Boys.
Yes,
I mean
that's right.
He's
And what was that sci-fi when Last Starman? Wasn't he the last Starman?
He was Starman. Yeah, where he was young. Oh my God, that was horrible. But and then he played in a movie called Fearless.
Yes,
where he survived a plane crash.
Survived a plane crash. Yeah,
that was also a great movie.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah. So
he's
I could
made
go on for
he's
days.
made content choices on his.
Yeah. That would definitely, Hell or High Water would be one of my three. And Big Lebowski, I would agree with you. The original Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid with Newman and Redford. I mean, just the cinematography in that and the content, that's so quotable. It was done in 1967.
Right.
And it's just like it could have been done yesterday.
Yeah, it's amazing. The older I get too, I notice these, films and even shows that hold up, that just are timeless. And I know, because I experience it myself, you have no idea if something's going to be timeless or not when you're making it. You just can't. There's too many moving parts,
Well, I could keep you all day, man. Is there anything you're working on that you're super excited about as we close you want to tell us about?
Well, the South Park thing is going to be great. Our buddy Garth is going to kind of redo the Ireland concerts that he did in 1997. So we're going to Ireland beginning of September. We're going to shoot 5 concerts and do them up, and then hopefully they'll be out by the end of the year in some way, shape, or fashion. We're in the early days of getting that all done. That's the immediate stuff that's coming up that I know of. And in television, it works at a much less predictable pace than films. So yeah, so that's basically all I can think of other than the normal stuff. Hopefully I'll be on Super Bowl this year. You never know. And whatever, anybody will give me a check, I'll try to show up and see if I can help them.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to talk to me. And it's such a fascinating thing that you do. I've been blessed to sit next to you in the edit bay. You were so gracious to help me out when I was young and broke. And it's so wonderful to watch your journey, your meteoric rise to where you are. I can't think of a better person that deserves it more. I wish you all the best. We can't let it go too long. Can't let it go this long again.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to be on here with you, and great questions, and catching up is more valuable than anything.
Hey, thanks for listening. Mark's the co-host of a podcast of his own called Full Contact Cannabis. For all the happenings in the cannabis industry, go check that out. And make sure you check us out at themindunset.com. Subscribe or follow us on your favorite platforms, and tell your friends, because the show doesn't go anywhere without you. Next week, episode 7, Rise and Shine. It's a solo episode, and you get no teaser. It's such a special show for me. I didn't want to spoil a single minute of it, so you're just going to have to trust me. So until next week, be nice, do good stuff.